start. Welcome today to the Open House Melbourne weekend, and we'll be talking about this project, the Queen Bess House or Queen Bess Row, which is located in East Melbourne. This is a project that was actually my first project after I went out on my own as an architect when I left my previous workplace. I was a sole trader at the time. It was my first project of a significant size. It won my first award and it got my first sort of media presence, I guess. So it's one I'm very proud of, and I put a lot of love into it, and it really resonated with me as well, the brief and the approach. And just the most magnificent building to work with. So it's my absolute pleasure to talk about this project with you all today. So we actually started this project in 2010 and it was finished in 2012 and then won its award in 2013. I was going to say something else, but it's completely slipped my mind. Actually, a very good point before I do start, I have to watch the time because I'm quite good at talking. We had the most excellent builder on this project, David Coxell of DC Construction, and we had a very close working relationship. So David is one of those very thoughtful, crafty people. So it was an absolute joy to be there and resolve details and things that came up during the build with him. And he had just a beautiful approach to the project as well. So that was a great joy. So what I will do, I will share, hopefully the right screen. Whoop. We'll try this one. Okay, can everyone see that? Might just put that over there. Okay, so this is actually one of the rooms of the house, and this is really just a very quick introduction to, I guess, the approach and the intention of the project. So this is the story of a historic house regaining its dignity and liveliness in the context of the 21st century. And it was informed by its current owners' passion for history, design, and the art world. Now, I'll just mention some of this history overview and then I'll play that little video. So I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen. Actually, I should just check. Can everyone see my screen with these pictures? Excellent, thank you. So this is the building here. Now this is actually 3 dwellings together, and the 3 of them together comprise Queen Bess Row in East Melbourne. So the heritage listed building Queen Bess Row was built in 1886 in the wealth of the gold rush, and it was designed by renowned local architects Tappin Gilbert and Dennehy. So it's now 3 separate buildings, 3 separate dwellings, but it's had a lot of different histories and different uses. So it has accommodated a Temperance Hotel, a doss house, and it was also one of Melbourne's first converted apartment buildings in the 40s. And it's a beautiful example of the Queen Anne revival style. So it's over 4 levels and it's got 2 staircases in each of the dwellings. Now what I'll do, I'll just see if I can jump to the video. Bear with me while I try this. Okay, do I get a thumbs up? Can you see my smiley face? Excellent. So I'll just play, this only goes for about 2 minutes. Oh, that audio is working. Can everyone hear that or not?
No.
No, okay. I'll talk over it. This is me talking. So this is, as we've just seen from the other angle, this is the entry. the kitchen on the ground floor at the rear. One of the hallways on one of the 2 levels like this. And the courtyard. This is the library, living area. And by the way, you can watch this on the ZGA Studio YouTube channel as well, if you want to hear the real words, not my voiceover words. So these are actually the bathrooms, which were old servant rooms. So we actually turned them into bathrooms, but we actually treated the bathrooms as if they were real rooms in memory of their former use. This is the ensuite to the main bedroom. So it's open to the hallway on the top floor, but that screen you saw moving just gave a bit of privacy to that bath area. There we go. Okay, so that was, and again, you can listen to the real words, the proper words. Sorry, now I'm trying to find where I was before. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. Oh yes, so sorry, to follow through that thought. So yeah, if you want to watch that clip with the more specific dialogue, if you go to the ZGA Studio YouTube channel, it will be there. And there's also another recorded session that was from Channel 31 and the Heritage Council. So they did a little video of it as well a couple of years back. So that's also there if you want a bit more information on the project. So you can actually see some of these images up the top sort of just show some of those glimpses of, I guess, different stories of this house and this building. And that's quite important to this project, because the notion of how you deal with a heritage building, something that's been around a while in Australian context, and which stories you choose to tell is quite important. So in this project, we were quite interested in not just showing one story. So not looking at the time it was built and saying, that's all there is to this building, but looking at a whole host of different stories along the way. And there were things that we found even during the renovation, you know, rent books in the attic and old nails and just some very interesting objects that the owners very passionately kept and have archived and stored. So they form part of the story as well. Now, let's just see. I might try this again. Sorry, I'm having a few technical issues. I'll just reload that one. Okay. Here we are. Okay, can everyone see this page now that says exterior state existing condition? Yes, excellent. Thank you very much. So I'll just go back one actually. So this gives you a bit of an idea of what the house was like before we did any work to it. So it's still beautiful and still very solid, I guess a very proud sort of house. But there are a lot of issues with it in terms of being a contemporary building to sustain and keep into future generations. And a lot of that was, when you look at sort of historic buildings or buildings that often haven't been renovated, often there's very little connection to the outdoors, because things that we prize now, like courtyards, used to be service spaces. So the notion of a rear of a house was either a laundry or a kitchen, and it was a space that was for domestic duties, not for socialising. So it's quite interesting. The house, before we did any work to it, had pretty much no connection to the courtyard at all. All the doors were solid doors, so there was no visual connection, there was no daylight coming into the rear of the house. And you can actually see from some of these images as well, there's a lot of sort of elements added to over the years, you know, bits of pipework, PVC piping, rusted sewer pipes, that sort of thing. So there was actually a lot of restoration in a sense, but also revitalisation for this project. So this is what the house looked like before we renovated. Again, very dark, very closed off. Those kitchen spaces, it was only the 2 windows that brought in natural light. And you basically looked through the kitchen to a toilet and a laundry. These were the upstairs hallway. So again, quite dark, quite closed off. And bathrooms, which is in the locations that we actually ended up putting the lift. So this here is actually a very interesting element. This was an old riser that was actually built in the house originally, which was before they had running water in houses. So this is quite a unique feature of this house, and it shows just the forethought that the designers, the builders, the owners had at the time for embracing future technology. So it's quite a fascinating part of the project. This runs up all levels of the house. And this was actually the only part of the house that was National Trust listed. The whole house itself was, did have a heritage listing, the Victorian Heritage. So this is just a bit of a glimpse of what we got at the end. So we saw those images before of the courtyard and those solid doors. So these spaces here used to actually be the toilet and the laundry of the house. So because now we tend to all sort of live and breathe all parts of a house, all the duties, you know, we don't want a shut off kitchen that we have a servant come and prepare our meals. We actually want to be there and socialise and sit around the family table. So this project, we moved the kitchen to the very back here. So it had this direct relationship to the outdoors. It could gain natural light and also visibility. So we wanted to be able to see the outdoors, and there's a very beautiful fence on the other side of the courtyard that's got a beautiful old climbing rose on it. So really that outlook and that backdrop was a beautiful addition for the owners. You can see here a little bit of attention to detail. So we kept all the old bluestone sills. We cut the deck around these bluestone footings. So the poor guys on site, I think they loved it actually, but there was a bit of whinging. They actually hand drew and then cut around every outcrop of these bluestone footings. This here was actually a sewer stack riser. So it was a vent for the sewer. Which just used to be like a big gully trap sort of thing. So we dressed that up, and it's still a vent for the sewer, but it's also the overflow for the garden hose. And we inserted these steel reveals into these archways, and that is mostly because these walls are so thick. They're probably 350, 400 mil, so, you know, 35 to 40 centimetres thick. And we wrapped the whole depth of the wall in steel, just to really accentuate that solidity of the existing house. A bit of a sunshade across here to provide some shading, little cutout for the light, so you get a bit of, I guess, a little bit of drama and joy. And also we inserted this planter box here so that from the kitchen you could have your parsley growing, or some flowers or whatever you choose. Also here you can see this is the original downpipe. This used to go off on an angle to this bluestone sump here. Really, we just straightened it up. It was all rusted out below, so we've then sleeved it in this quite modern extension to the downpipe, and we've moved over the existing bluestone here. So really, the changes we make are trying to be very open and honest. So we're trying to make a clear distinction between what was there and what is there now. And also, I think some of these details show that we are very respectful. We are actually sort of paying honour to what was there already. So this is the courtyard. And from the rear of the courtyard, you can see this beautiful climbing rose. Whoops, that moved a bit fast. And just a couple more views here. So this actually looks onto that lift inside, the glass lift. And this used to be one of those solid doors as well. This was actually the sewer stack riser, which we actually replaced with a copper riser because the old one, I think from memory, they'd made some modifications and it was quite appalling. They'd brought some PVC piping down on the outside and the old cast iron riser was all rusted out. So we basically fixed that all up on the levels above. We took the PVC pipes out. And again, just as an ode to the quality of this building, we went to a bit of effort and we put in this copper riser. And also, again, that glass allows for a lot of light coming into that lift well. There's windows all up above. So as the lift moves up in the house, you actually, as you approach each level, you get that light coming in. Again, almost marking your transition to that level above. So I won't dwell on these, but these are basically the floor plans, the street on this side, the front of the house being quite large, the rear of the house being the old, I guess, servant zones and a lot narrower. And this is a section. So again, streets here, and this is the height of the building from the street. So again, you get a sense of that front of the house having much higher ceilings as opposed to the back of the house, which was a lot smaller rooms and lower ceilings. So these would have been basically the servant accommodations. What's not shown in this section is a secondary servant stair at the rear as well, that actually was very useful in terms of the revised layout for this building, because we were able to connect a lot of these rear levels in a vertical sense. So you could actually move from this space to this space quite easily by just going up the stairs here rather than having to come back through the house. We chose this level, this point here, to put the lift in. Basically, the owners wanted this house to be able to accommodate them for their lifetime. So they could foresee in future years whether there might be, you know, health issues, they might need wheelchair access, all sorts of issues like that. They wanted to make sure that this house was somewhere that they could stay forever. So basically we located a lift so that you could get a straight access from the street, and then because we've got ups and downs in all the different levels at the rear, we had to sort of work out which access points were the most critical if there was someone who had impaired, I guess, physical movement through the house. So this, in a way, determined our shift to moving the main bedroom from one of these two front rooms up to this room here. Now, this used to be probably the most underutilized room of the house. It was a gym, had a flat ceiling, it was kind of a storage space. So this room here, as you can sort of see, we lifted the ceiling up. And this is actually the image we had at the beginning of the black plywood ceiling and the sliding door and the bed in it. So this became quite a beautiful space. The main bedroom, this is the ensuite that we saw with that sliding steel door, or aluminium door, I should say. And it completely changed the way the house was set up. Kitchen and family kitchen zone are down here. So these are just some of the views now as you enter the house. So we've brought a lot of light into the house. We've also, again, through glass, been able to link the front and the back of the house. So it's almost saying, yes, there was a distinction in history, but now we want to use this as a framing device so that you can see from the front to the back. It's almost flipping on its head the notion of, you know, the master and the servant, but it's also preserving a more casual atmosphere at the rear. So this room that you can see through into is actually the family kitchen, the table that everyone congregates around, and the working kitchen is through the next archway. So it's almost like the front rooms are still formal rooms, a dining room and I guess a formal lounge. So entertaining, they can still be quite closed off. You can still have, you know, grandchildren running around. In this family space, you have visual connection, but you also have acoustic separation. So you can be having a very nice dinner party and you can still have the grandkids screaming and throwing blocks around. So it allows for a lot of different ways of living, I guess. So this is the kitchen that we could see through that glass door. This was an old archway that we actually discovered during demolition. There was an old baker's oven in there. So we actually worked with that and basically adjusted our drawings along the way so that we could incorporate it. So here you can see the two archways, the baker's oven and then the old, what would have been the old range. So basically this is the rear of the house at ground floor. You can look back to the entry here. This is that sort of middle part of the house that we've put that glass lift in. You can see you get continuous access up to the lift and then a step down into the kitchen. And then that kitchen level runs straight out to the courtyard. Mr. Picasso here, a bust of Picasso. This little sketch over here may be a bit tricky to read, but basically it's a floor plan tilted on its side and then I've projected up to sort of show, I guess, a 3D massing of that rear kitchen. So for instance, this here is where the lift is, the courtyard's down here, glass, the windows, the glass doors. This is where that herb planter box is outside the kitchen zone. So basically this is, I guess, a servery kitchen. It's got that long white bench. It's got the table. This is the glass door back here from the entry, this one. There's actually a bar in here as well, opposite the lift. So we can't see it in this image, but it's just on the left here.
Excuse me, Zoe, but yes, we can't see your cursor.
Oh, so okay.
Either, can you enlarge the image because it's not in proper presentation mode? We're seeing a preview of the next slide, which is making...
Oh, are you? Oh, sorry. I must have the wrong screen. Thank you for letting me know.
Oh, and now I can see your cursor, so...
Yeah, no, I must be sharing the wrong screen. I knew there would be something I did. Let me just see if I can fix that. Whoops.
But I can't see the next screen, so I can just see one.
Let me just see if I can get the right one.
It's a conundrum.
How's that? Is that...
Perfect.
Can you see the cursor now? Yes, all good? Excellent. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. Oh, yes. Well, it would have been very hard to see on that small screen. Okay, so I'll do a very brief recap of what I was saying. So this archway here is essentially here in the plan, and this lift is here. This is the family zone of the kitchen. So there is a servery bench along here, and then the kitchen table sits here. That's our step down that we can see. So Mr. Picasso here is just up on this step. And then you look through that archway to the actual, I guess, working kitchen. You can imagine it is actually a double-sized kitchen. So the working kitchen itself is quite small, but really this whole space acts as an extended kitchen. This is the steel door that leads out to the courtyard. This is where our planter box is, the parsley. And this is the main kitchen bench. We've got an integrated fridge in here. This is a glass display box that sits above the fridge that had some sculptures in it. And these are the rear servant stairs. So a lot of what we did in pulling out what used to be the toilet and the laundry in this space, which were very dark, enclosed rooms, we've actually managed to get light sources. There's a little window here that comes in through this stair with a glass door. We get the light from upstairs coming down through this glass balustrade into this room. We've got a little window onto the back lane here. And we've got, of course, the windows onto the courtyard. So we've managed to get natural light from three sides of this space to come in. So what used to be a very dark, introverted space now is very rare that there's any lighting even turned on. And I think a lot of our approach to this project was just very carefully thought out, very small adjustments just to maximise the potential that the existing building already showed us. So this is in the front of the house, the dining space. So we had a very light touch here. Basically, we repainted, we sanded back the floors and put in contemporary lighting. So you can see it's quite subtle, quite seamless. We've got some uplights here in the floor for the artwork on the walls. We've got some pendant lighting over the dining table to make it quite an intimate feel in that space. And we've actually got a couple of additional ceiling lights. But you can see things like this beautiful fireplace, the mantle. Every room had a different kind of marble. We've kept all of the cracks through the tiles. We've kept the signs of wear here. And I think it's really important that a heritage house can show its history. It doesn't have to be preserved as a pristine, modern, just built project. I think we want to be able to see that this has been worn down, it's been used, there's been a fire at some point, and they're all really interesting stories that we deliberately preserved in this project. And again, just small things like this, because we did do quite a lot in reworking the way the house was used, we had to rethink how all the spaces connect together as well. So with two staircases, split levels that go up and down on different floors, it's a very tricky three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle of access through the house. One of our major moves was there was an existing skylight here, but it was I guess it didn't let a whole lot of light in, and there was a few issues. It was leaking and it was not in a great state. So we actually replaced that, and just by angling this ceiling line, we were able to get a lot more light coming in, and that light spills right down the 4 stories of this main staircase and even brings light down into that entry area. You would have seen some of those images of the sliding doors that we actually had those custom made, so that we had a cutout that sat around the window sill and we had a cutout that sat up against the skirting. You can see in this photo here, the scale of this house is just phenomenal. Like these skirting boards would be, 35 40 centimetres high, and they'd project out from the wall another 8 to 10 centimetres. So when we introduced some sliding doors in the hallways to allow for the house to be rezoned in different ways so that you could have different levels of privacy for, I guess, the owners and also their guests and extended family, we used a lot of sliding doors through the hallways to provide those different zones of privacy. And those doors, again, had to be very carefully designed around all of these beautiful features. But again, it's a bit like that story of the planter box in the courtyard that sits over that blue stone sill for the window. It's almost like by carefully detailing around these features, it's almost like giant arrow saying, look at this as well, because you can't help but interact with the original house when you're sort of directed to it by the way we've detailed the contemporary elements. So again, I won't dwell on these images, but essentially these are the bathrooms which we put into the rear shoebox former servant spaces. And the deliberate intention was to make these feel like rooms in their own right. A lot of them had small fireplaces in them. And you'd think, oh, we're putting a bathroom in, should we just take the fireplace out? But that's not what we were interested in. We're interested in working with the existing building and having a dialogue with it. So in designing the bathrooms, and each one is a little bit different, we've tried to make them spaces that you could actually dwell and linger in. So even things like just centering this basin on a plinth that's in the middle of the window and directing your gaze out the window, you know, that again is having a discussion with this window that was already there. Putting in this seat that actually forms the top of the joinery storage cupboards, allows for a towel to be hung. And this datum for the marble, actually, you can't see it in this image, but to the right there is a fireplace, and that runs in and matches the top of the fireplace. The fireplace in this room is a sort of a grey streaked marble. So we've actually reversed it. We've gone the darker marble with the white streaks. Again, it's speaking to it, but it's not trying to be the same. So these are the sliding doors I was talking about before, and that detailing of the handle that sits around the window. You're probably saying, what are those bright striped walls? Basically, in there you can see the fireplace. This is a different bathroom up above. You can see the fireplace there as well. And again, we've centered a basin here. On that fireplace, we've inserted a riser sort of just in front of it to allow for the water pipes. Those brightly coloured stripes, the servants' rooms at the rear were quite small. So we did take out a section of the hall wall and we actually replaced that with those striped walls. And again, the idea was we don't want to put it back and put a false cornice and skirting on so it looks original. We want to say very clearly that this has been changed. This is new. This is a new part of the story of this house. And also the idea of the stripes, as you've probably noticed in some of these images, the owners are quite amazing art and antique collectors. And the idea for them was that this could be a living part of the house, a curated art piece, so that over time they could change the colours of those stripes. So they were never meant to be a static element. They're actually meant to be something, again, that the current owners could interact with and play with. Again, a sense of joy and a sense of, well, this is our time in the house and it is a living house and we are going to keep living with it. We're going to keep interacting with it. So it's almost like a living artwork in that sense. So this is the ensuite on the top level that connects through to the main bedroom. Again, this has been designed around the existing fireplace, which is here, gone again. There's a little animation here showing how it's built up. So basically the existing fireplace is here. We've built this timber base for the bath, and then the bath sits here in line with the fireplace. We've actually put a glass insert in the fireplace, and the timber carries through. It's a bit of an analogy that the timber is almost like water lapping up against the fireplace here. And then this is that black metal unit with the pivoting door that again allows privacy to the bath. So this is the hallway. This is where the lift comes up from the ground level. We've got a sliding door here. So you can close off that whole realm. Through this archway is the main bedroom. So basically you can close this off for privacy, but you're still connected to the bedroom. So that notion of the pivoting screen sort of acknowledges that, yes, this is a private space. However, when we're in a bath, we might want an extra level of privacy. We might want to read a book or just relax and know that we are on our own, having a lovely, quiet experience. The shower is tucked around the back here, basins here, and in a separate room, we've got the toilet with a separate basin there. So you can see in this image, these are the basins. You can see the shower through here and this sort of raised step level. This is an integrated shower grate. So again, a little seamless detail, and it's designed to look like this is all sort of a timber element that wraps up, almost like a piece of furniture in a sense. By the way, the cutouts on this unit, this joinery unit, the rotating cupboard. Again, it's almost like a custom designed artwork which allows the current owners to have their input into the stories that have been and will be in this house. So these holes are actually a combination of the owners and their 2 children's star signs that we commissioned this unit. Really as a way of, again, a very personal element for the owners, and another connection to that notion that it is sort of a curated living space. So this is that main bedroom that links to the ensuite. You can just see those servant stairs coming up here. This is the connection of that riser that comes up through the house. This is actually the level below, but now we're back to the main bedroom. So you can see this space, as I said earlier, was the most underused space in the house previously. It had a flat ceiling here. It was the gym. It was dark and very unappealing. So just in lifting that ceiling and giving it a bit of love here, providing again a doorway here to allow for some privacy. That door also acts as, I guess, a little bit of intrigue. If anyone's ever been to the John Soane Museum in London, it's that little sense of exploration. They have wall panels that open up and they have artworks on the inside. So this door slides sideways and we're exposed to that, the original door for that, that riser that runs up through the house. So again, it's working with the existing storage of the house and adding layers. So this again is a bit of a playful sense of discovery within the house. We also discovered this chimney stepped out. We've only found that out once we removed the ceiling. And it was actually our choice at the time to keep that exposed and again, work with that sense of discovery and joy and just awareness of that existing house, some of the stories that have been and will be in this project. And here we've just got a little quote from the owners, which is quite lovely. It is a joy to live in the renovated spaces, and if we were to go through the process again, we would not make any changes. And I guess as the architect and the one who interprets the brief of the owner into the outcome, that to me is what it's all about. That we have listened and we have been able to work with what's there and achieved hopefully something more than you could have imagined. I guess for us, it's not always a fun process. There's a lot of steps, a lot of approvals, obviously, with National Trust and Victorian Heritage Register. Quite a long process. And again, this project, I think, had about a 12-month build. And you think, well, what was built? Well, nothing was built, but a lot was altered. A lot of was renovated, and very sensitively and carefully. But it's all worth it for us when I think the sense of joy is a big thing for me. We're going to enjoy our experience of place if we can bring in a connection of the human element, what makes us tick, what brings us pleasure, satisfaction, peace, joy. All these things are basically elements that we try to put into our projects. And at the end of the day, they're all the things I would want if it was my project. So it gives me enormous satisfaction that we have been able to achieve this outcome for those owners. I've just got a very, sorry, my spacebar's not working. Very small blurb about our studio. I'll just talk over it. We're incredibly small. As I said, when I started this project, it was just me on my own. We're now a company. So what are we, 10 years later? We're a company. There's 4 of us. Grant here is an associate. He's been with us for probably the last 7 years now. And yeah, Grant kind of makes everything tick. Without him, it would be an interesting time. Let's just put it that way. I am the director and the principal architect, and I work on every project with the rest of the team. We have Karen, who is our senior project architect as well, and Karen and Taryn. So Taryn actually is a registered carpenter, and he's currently studying architecture. And it was my joy to meet Taryn when I was teaching him at RMIT last year. And just the experience of having a craftsperson on our team who's also studying architecture brings another layer of knowledge, which is fantastic for us. Little bit about me. So yeah, I'm probably more than 19 years now, to be honest. But I've basically focused on residential projects, so houses, and again, human-focused architecture in balance with the natural world is my big thing. So the natural world might be natural light, or the natural world could be shadows of trees swaying, or watching Frankie the Dachshund run past the window, you know, chomping up some flowers, who knows. But I think all these connections actually keep us sane as people. They work to what we need and what makes us calm, engaged, social people, especially in this time where we are under restriction. It's more important than ever in our home environments to sort of see what really matters, what we really need to feel happy, calm, at our best. So I'm very active in the industry. I've been a former director of Archie Team over 5 years. I've worked with Open House Melbourne previously as a co-host of the Naked Architect series, which just really tries to explain some of the steps of the process, because it is a long and often complex process and there's a lot to take in. We don't see much on all the home reno shows on TV. They don't really explain any of that. I'm a signatory of Architects Declare. We're basically looking to the future world and trying to make buildings now that will thrive in the future and provide positive change. So again, anyone who missed it, I'm actually hosting a discussion for Open House Melbourne on Monday night. And it's a panel discussion between architects declare, builders declare, planners declare, and engineers declare, all Australian. So that's quite an interesting thing to hear more about. It's the first time all these groups will come together in the one place. Basically, my vision for 2020 on is healthy buildings, creating a joyful and sustainable world for future generations. I think there's no point in doing anything if we can't achieve that. And just to wrap up my dialogue, I guess, here's a glimpse of some of our other recent projects. They haven't sort of been completed or finished or out in the media as yet, but a little glimpse of what's in the pipeline for us. And just a thank you for listening to my monologue. Now, let me just check what time it is. Oh, not bad. So we've got about 8 minutes or so. Would anybody, let me just stop this sharing. There we go. Oh, hello. Hi, Marlene. How are you? I guess I would love to hand it over to you guys now. If anyone has any question. Oh, sorry. Hi, Zoe, what time Monday night? So it's 4 to 5 p.m. I should say Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon, 4 to 5 p.m. And the event is called Construction Declares. Oh, sorry. Someone did tell me you couldn't see the pointer. I should have been reading the chats as well. Anyway, forgive me. Well, I guess, does anyone have, I'll hand it over to anyone out there, if you want to unmute yourself and just ask any questions. And I'm happy to take questions about any aspect of the project, response to neighbourhood, heritage, owner's brief, whatever you like. Everyone's shy. Oh, I must have covered everything in the presentation.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
My name's not actually Friends. Just the Zoom I come in on.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, why was it called Queen Bess?
The original house.
Yes.
That's a very, very interesting question. I don't know. I think that would have to hark back to a sort of history question.
Well, it is more history, absolutely a history question. I'm just wondering because it's seen as a Queen Anne revival.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tie that in.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That's actually the name of well, it's actually had a few different names. I do actually have a history sheet here. Bear with me while I just pull that up, because each individual dwelling has had several different names. For instance, the one next door was at one point a women's private hospital, and I think it was called Creag at that time. What chance have I got of finding the right information right now?
Don't worry, I'll Google and see if I can find out.
But I'm doing.
Let me I probably have it here somewhere. Or maybe not. No, sorry, I don't have it on hand. But feel free, if you want to shoot through an email, I can look it up and send that on.
Thank you.
At some point. It is an interesting question because a lot of things were called after Elizabeth, but that was obviously Queen Elizabeth, and she wasn't around at that stage. So, right. Very interesting. Any other queries? What does everyone think about that notion of, I guess, different eras of history and living brought together and kept at the same time rather than just looking at one era? Did it seem strange to anyone that we're sort of living in lots of different periods at the same time? I guess my own perspective on that, and it's something I've said to clients a little bit, is it's a bit like having, you know, I don't know how often people have it these days, but the old standard piano up in the corner and you've got family photos dating back generations. I think part of who we are isn't just us in the present moment, but it's us and how we've evolved and where we've come from and the family stories that we carry. And I see the same thing with our buildings. They're not from one place or one time. And I think just even those early slides of the project, looking at how many stories this project's had. I mean, it was a doss house. It had 6 families living there at one point. They'd closed in the balconies. There's scorch marks on a wall where someone lit an indoor fire to keep warm. I mean, you know, there's a whole cornice that's missing because there was water damage in a room because it was in really poor condition. It was basically a derelict building at one point. So there's stories along the way. We left that cornice missing as a memory of that time. We didn't want to erase this history and just sweep it under the table. We wanted it to be living history because that tells so much about who we are and where we've come from, and it points us in the direction for the future.
Hi, Zoe.
Yeah, go on.
It's Fiona here.
Hi, Fiona. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you for this morning's presentation. It was lovely.
Oh, my pleasure.
I can just see in the chat line that Irene has asked twice about the repointing. Why didn't you repoint the bricks?
Well, these bricks actually weren't pointed in the first place. So in that era, brick pointing wasn't what was done. We did actually repair some of the bricks on the neighbouring property, this being 4 stories high, and there was a neighbouring house that was 2 stories and detached. So we actually had a cherry picker in their driveway and a guy, you know, 4 stories up, hovering around trying to repair some of the mortar that had dissolved over the years. So we did some repair works like that. We did replace a lot of the slate roofing where it had fallen in. You could see daylight through it. All of the flashings around the roof, they were lead flashings. So we actually had a specialist lead contractor come in and replace those flashings with lead flashings again, because that was how it was done in the first place. So again, we didn't want to put a modern roof on, and by the way, Heritage Victoria would not have allowed us to. But sorry, I've just seen another question here. I should look at the chat. A little bit more about the lift. So that lift actually came from Italy. It was an Elfo lift. How easy to clean the glass? I should ask the owner that, but no, I do know because I pop around quite often. The glass isn't a huge issue. Basically, the lift itself is a carriage that just is basically a floor platform that rises up and down in the glass lift. So the glass is actually just the outer layer. It's like having a glass door or a glass window between rooms. So really, it's just the glass at each level that needs to be cleaned. So that's not too tricky. Okay.
I was just wondering about the other parts of the building.
Yes.
Have they been renovated or restored or?
Before we...
Well, now, I mean, there are 3, didn't you say there were 3?
Oh, yes. Well, there's,
just curious.
No, there's separate dwellings. So this was the one on the uphill side, the uphill end. Mm-hmm. Then there's a central one and there's one on the street corner. So all 3 have been renovated at different times and in quite different styles with quite different approaches. So I guess that does come down to, again, what you want to achieve and how you want to work with a heritage building. And I think it was a very clear brief for us, and it tied in with our own, I guess, our own process of working, that this wasn't to be pared back to just one period or one era, but was to try and remain as a living building. So to embrace all those stories and all those periods since it first came to be. I think the property adjacent, I think, has been renovated to more of a sort of, what is it, almost a William Morris kind of vibe. And the one on the corner is sort of quite an elegant, almost original state, I would say. So quite different approaches. And again, I'd just like to stress that when you are working with a designer or architect, that's why it's just so important that you choose someone who suits you, that you get along well with, and that's actually on the same page with the vision. That's probably the most critical thing. Otherwise, you could be led in any direction, or you could just be in conflict constantly, which would be not much fun either. Yeah. So Irene, presumably they each had had different wishes. How unified are they? Sorry, Irene, is that related to the 3 different dwellings or the styles of the house? No, I will take a guess that Irene's referring to how unified is the house having all these different styles. And I would just say it's a living house. It already had all those styles because it's basically lived up to the point. And a lot of people, I guess, with heritage, it's almost like when we get married and we wear fancy wedding dresses from another era. It's almost like often people, when they find a heritage house, they think, oh, it can't look like it's contemporary. It has to look like heritage or people won't know it's old. But I think there's no doubt that this house is old. It's pretty obvious. And it's got such a strength to it that it was strong enough to hold basically all the periods of its history, all those stories and narratives of people who have lived there and how it's been transformed over the years. And we've just added a very honest next level, I guess, touch. We've tried not to erode anything. Even the doors that we took off at the ground level have been stored in case a future owner wants to reinstate them as part of that story of the house. So I think it's just an honesty of, if we want our heritage to stay relevant and continue to live and be embraced and enjoyed by future generations, we need to make sure, as our society changes, our needs changes, we need to make sure that these buildings can adapt, evolve and stay relevant. And to us, this building is incredibly relevant because it so suits the owners and how they live. It so suits their collection of furniture from all different eras of history, and it so suits their contemporary art collection. It can basically embrace a whole lot of stories from a whole lot of periods of time, including the present. And I think that to us is the key thing. We don't want to hark back with a sense of nostalgia. We want to be open and honest, and we want to look to the future. So we've basically given this house almost a contemporary makeover, but again, we've been very clear about what we have changed. And that's why we didn't try to imitate or reproduce historic elements. We just tried to make very clean, very simple, very carefully detailed interactions with the existing house and the stories it had to tell us. Have I missed any other questions? Okay, I think I've got it. I think I've covered it all. So, I mean, we are just very, very slightly over time, so I'm happy with that. Did anyone have any final comments? Otherwise, on that note, I may actually say happy almost lunchtime on Saturday.
It's beautiful, Zoe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming in and joining in and just having an interest in Open House Melbourne and in the environment that we live in. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And it's been a great joy to see your lovely faces and chat and talk and share this story with you.
Maybe we would be out in the fresh air this time next year.
Yes, that would be nice too.
Hope so.
Thanks very much, Zoe.
Fantastic. Thank you and take care, have fun, and hope to chat again soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Zoe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.